We use technology on the fields to make our game better. Gene and I were referring to how we brought instant replay so that the feeds now come back into our headquarters our headquarters in New York. And the head of officiating can participate with Gene, as an example, in reaching the right decision. That's a good use of technology in our sidelines. We're using Surface tablets on the sidelines so that we can share important football information from a coaching standpoint that is, I think, made the game better and made the game safer. We're using tablets to help us with concussion protocol when a player may have had a head injury or suspected of a head injury. Again, making the game safer and better. You bring up a very big challenge for us because the television experience continues to get better and better. High definition television, and when you see the next version of high definition television, it's an incredible experience. That's going to continue to happen. We embrace that. But what it does is it causes us to have to work harder to get people into our stadiums and entertain them. And we're fortunate, we're about 99.5% full to our capacity, but it's more challenging. You have to focus on the value equation, as I call it. What are the pricing? What are the services that you offer? Can people come and be safe and have an enjoyable experience? How do you get them in and out of the stadium? How do you use technology to make sure that when they come to a stadium, they're not disconnected? One of our big challenges to get Wi-Fi into a stadium with 75 or 80,000 people is a real challenge. And we're getting close with our partners to be able to deliver on that Wi-Fi. And better microphones, yes, that would help too. But I think the challenge for us is to make sure that people don't have to disconnect. People are so tied to their phones and they want to use social media to tell them where they are and share the experience. And we want to encourage that. And so our effort is to give them the freeway, the highway to do that, and then allow people to do the same thing they would do sitting in their home or in their room, but also give them access to replays or to any other information, fantasy football, whatever it may be, that they want to see at any point in time. But technology's been a challenge in that front, but we embrace that and think it's going to change the game for the better. Yes?
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. Goodell. My question for you is, because youth football is so big not only in southwestern Pennsylvania, and of course North Virginia and eastern Ohio, we all support that. What is the NFL doing these days to promote brain safety and brain health with youth football?
Well, it's a great question, because as someone who started playing tackle football in third grade, played 10 years of tackle football, I loved every minute I played the game, and it's a fabulous game that teaches you a lot about values that I believe will stay with you a lifetime. But you have to play it safely, and that starts with the proper techniques. And we've had a lot of focus on the field of changing the techniques that we use to tackle, which we used to block, and we used to play the game, and we call it taking the head out of the game. Obviously, there was resistance at first when you're changing the way the game is played, but I think the culture of the NFL has changed dramatically towards safety, towards using the right techniques, and getting back to the fundamentals of the way the game is played. So we've changed those techniques, and we've seen a 36% reduction in concussions over the last 3 years. We've changed rules, including the kickoff, hits on defensive players, had that kind of impact. We've seen a general reduction in injuries, in serious injuries, because we've focused on how do we improve the quality of the fields, how do we improve the equipment, how do we use technology to develop better equipment. So we've invested in research. We have a challenge out with our partner GE and Under Armour, which is called a healthy challenge, head healthy challenge, which is how do we develop a better helmet? Are there materials that can lead to better equipment? That has proven to be a tremendous success. We have 2 or 3 winners that we are investing behind, and we believe we're going to be announcing it just in the next 30 days. It's going to change the quality of helmets for all sports, quite frankly. Second, we've invested in research with National Institutes of Health. How do we learn more about the brain? How do we learn more about concussions? We are working closely with great organizations like UPMC here in Pittsburgh, which has done incredible work on the treatment of concussions. And we're sharing all of that across all levels of sports. We see it in football, we see it in soccer, we see it in hockey, we see it in any participation sport where there's high speeds and activity and contact. And that's great for kids, but if we can done more safely, we think we're going to lead the way in helping us find safer ways to play all sports. And I'll tell you, it goes well beyond sports. It goes into our military. One of the things we've been able to do is our return to field protocols when a player has a head injury are the same protocols that they use on return to the battlefield for our military members. And that's because we've shared all that data with them. We've worked with them. We developed this protocols. And it's going to make a difference for our military members also. So the work we're doing, we're very proud of. We're not done yet. We've got a lot more to do, but it goes back to the point I think we can make a difference and well beyond our football field. That's a good question, though.
Commissioner,
Yes.
what challenges do you have as far as making a ruling, like the Ray Rice ruling? I mean, it's got to be a headache to you to make a ruling and then be challenged by the players union, and then it goes back and forth. When, I don't know how to exactly state the question, but we all see these issues, you make a ruling, and then 3 months later they double back on the ruling. That's got to be a tough position for you.
You know, whenever you go through the discipline process, it's always a difficult thing. What you want is consistency, fairness. You want to make sure that you're using discipline in order to enforce your rules and your standards. And we expect that we're going to get challenges when that happens. The vast majority of our rulings are held up. We obviously have rulings that aren't. We believe that we are coming to a very good place where we're going to be able to enforce our rulings and be successful in holding those standards at the highest possible level. We believe our standards should be raised. We believe that we have that obligation to our communities. When we disappoint is when we don't hit those standards. And that's my responsibility to make sure we hit that. And when we don't, we got to admit it, and we've got to go back and redouble our efforts. Recognizing that the union would rather have lower penalties, they would rather not have discipline. We would rather not have discipline, but when there's a violation of either our policies or our rules, there have to be consequences. And they have to be done firmly, they have to be done consistently, they have to be done fairly. And so we will not relent on this. This is something that we think is in the best interest of our players, both on and off the field, and more importantly, our game. And I believe our fans expect us to do that.
Yes, I have a question concerning expansion. When you decide to expand, do you put feelers out to potential locations, or do you wait for people to come to you, like overseas?
You're talking about expanding the number of games?
No, I'm talking about like
into other markets?
London,
Yeah.
and Mexico.
Well, part of our job is to grow the game. Our job is to make the game more popular on a global basis. So we actively work to try to promote our game to new markets. You mentioned the UK. We've been very successful in London. We're playing 3 games this year. We believe they're all sold out, but our game is growing. The more our fans get an opportunity to experience football, the more they want it. And what we found several years ago when we were playing preseason games is that they wanted the real thing. They wanted to see a competitive game. They call them friendlies in the UK. They wanted to see competitive games with the best players. And they've responded to that. So we've accelerated our planning, we've accelerated our television coverage, our selling of merchandise, our marketing, our sponsorship activity, the playing of games. And I truly believe that it's something that will happen at some stage, that there will be an NFL franchise in the UK. I think that's great for a game. I think it's great for our fans, and it'll make our game more global. There's a curiosity about America's favorite game, and we have a responsibility to share that. As far as expanding the number of teams, we've been at 32 teams for about 15 years now. I don't see us expanding beyond the 32, but there are markets not only around the globe, but also Los Angeles, which has had a lot of attention about, can we get a franchise back successfully into the Los Angeles market? It's something we'd like to do if we can do it successfully.
Commissioner, I know you get a lot of complaints, but I want to compliment you in the NFL, as an avid NFL fan. I like how in recent years you've gone towards patriotism, the military aspect, you're honoring veterans, and just the patriotic thing that the NFL has taken and what you've done in the Super Bowls, and it a lot of the game. So I applaud you and thank you for that.
Well, thank you. That's we're honored to be able to do that. We think, again, our military deserves that kind of recognition for their sacrifice, their service. And it didn't start over the last few years. It's frankly a relationship that's close to 50 years old with the USO and other military organizations, which we think are just doing incredible work, and they deserve our support, they deserve our recognition, and we're proud to be partnering with them. Yes.
Commissioner, thank you for attending. I was wondering if the league addresses concerns from just a regular fan. We have salary caps, but do you anticipate any like ticket price caps? I think what made the game great was a blue collar support, especially in Pittsburgh, and there's a lot of people that just can't even get in the stadium now.
Yeah, what we do is there are legal restrictions in some of that. We can't dictate ticket prices. Each team has to dictate their own ticket prices. So we couldn't do that. In the collective bargaining agreement, we're able to do that because we have a union, we have a players association, and we can reach an agreement on a balance of a salary cap with sharing of revenues with free agency as an example, and multitude of other things. We wouldn't have that ability to do that. What we do is have each team be very responsive to saying, make sure that people have access and ability to attend an NFL game. That starts with pricing in my view, but it goes beyond that. It goes to the point of trying to make sure there's a great experience there, that as many fans as possible can attend a game. Now, unfortunately, we don't have enough room for all of the fans who want to come to a game, but there are opportunities. Our teams have gotten very creative in the way they've marketed, the way they've priced their tickets. One of the great developments, in my view, in the last couple of years is something called variable pricing, where the price will vary based on the game. So a game that may not be quite as attractive, a price will be dropped. Preseason games is a great example of that, a positive development in my view. We are going to continue to look at our preseason to see maybe we don't even need 4 preseason games anymore. It's something that we're continuing to evaluate, both from a football standpoint and a fan perspective. So I think some positive things are developing, and it must be working pretty well if we're able to keep 99.5% of our stadiums full. That's because we're flexible in our pricing and our marketing and how we're selling those tickets. But like everything, prices go up. And that's a challenge for all of us to make sure it's affordable for the average fan, which is important to us.
Commissioner,
Yes.
thank you for coming back to Washington.
Sure.
Question for you. All these younger players coming into the league are making millions and millions of dollars. What is the NFL doing to help them budget their funds so they have money when they get out of the NFL? So there's a lot of stories out there you hear and see about these young men going broke shortly after they left the NFL.
Well, let me correct one of those because we call it a myth. There's several myths that are out there. One of them is that our players, I think the one report I saw was 80% of our players are bankrupt within 2 years after leaving the NFL. That is not true. It's not even close. I think the number is about 10%. What you see here, and it's not after 2 years, it's after several years getting out of the game. What we see is that when a young man comes into the league, they do get an extraordinary amount of money, and they think it's going to last forever. And they have to plan. They have to invest money and do it wisely. All we can do is try to give them guidance on that. We can't dictate, we can't budget them, we can't determine how they spend their money. But we have what's called a rookie symposium, where we just completed this in Canton, Ohio at the end of June, where all of our drafted players come in. They spend 3 days, they understand our policies, but they also get helpful information from experts, professionals, of how to budget their money, how to put their money away. They have advisors because of the significant amount of money. We hope they will all get advisors and help them invest their money for the long term, so that they aren't just looking for now to the end of their career, they're looking to the end of their life and hopefully be able to use those funds in a positive way. So we're seeing some very positive changes about guys being more responsible with their money and recognizing that your playing career is going to end. Even if you have a long career, you're probably 35 or 36 years old. And I think those changes are going to help the individual players, their families, and make a difference for them long term. Which way? Yes.
Hello, Commissioner.
Hi.
There's been some rumors about a Super Bowl coming to Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you spreading those rumors, or are you asking a question?
Right here.
I got you. Yeah, there has been some discussion. As you all know, we had our first cold weather outdoor Super Bowl site in New York a couple of years ago. I think it was very successful. We missed the snow by about 3 hours, literally. I woke up the next morning and saw 6 inches of snow. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a great event for us. And we think football is meant to be played in the elements. We understand that, and we love that. The challenge is for hosting a Super Bowl is really the extraordinary amount of infrastructure you have to do that. We're now up to about 30,000 rooms that you need for all those visitors to come in. We have probably 150,000 people who come in for the game. Obviously, only 75 of them or so go to the game because they can't get access to tickets. But they want to be part of the celebration. Parties and events that are required for that, transportation. All of those things put a tremendous burden on smaller markets. And I think that's probably going to be the challenge for any small market. Pittsburgh will be included in that. The weather issue, this is ultimately a decision by the 32 teams. They vote on it. Some people like playing in the elements. Some people think the game should be played in perfect conditions in a Super Bowl. I know people have their view on that, but I've always thought football in the elements is a great part of the game. I love that. Yes?
Commissioner, thanks for being here, and Gene, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
A question that I have is, what is the NFL doing and going to continue to do about fan behavior and fan violence? I went to many games as a kid growing up, and right now, if I had a 8 or 10-year-old son or daughter, there's probably no way I would take them to an NFL event, and that's unfortunate because it's a great game. And, thank you.
Before you give up the mic, could you just tell me why, when you go to a game, what's the experience that ruins it for you?
All the pregame drinking, the fan behavior inside. I wouldn't want a little child around that.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. One of the things we've tried to do, I go to a game every year just as a fan. I go in the way everybody else goes in. I go with my nieces a lot of times. I go with my daughters. And I remember going to a game, I won't name where it was, about 10 years ago with my niece, who was then 12 years old. And I learned a lot about some of the things that were being said. And there were moments where it was uncomfortable. And we started an effort at that point in time to make sure that we improve the environment in our stadiums and recognize that it's okay to have a few beers and come to a game. You got to do it safely, but you also can't ruin the experience for anybody else. And what we have now is one of the most successful programs we've had is a texting program, where if you're at a game, you no longer have to call for an usher, which you probably, by the time the usher got there, you'd have a lot of beer thrown on you and be thrown out of the section. But now you can text, and security personnel will be there in a matter of, really within a minute, is what we've used as our goal. In addition, our stadiums are all putting cameras in, so we can see fan behavior that's inappropriate. And they're taken out of the stadium, and in many cases, we'll take their tickets, and you'll lose the right to purchase tickets, at least for a period of time. So it's probably something we're not gonna do it perfectly, but I think we've made progress on it in the last 5 years. So I hope you'll take your daughters back, and I hope you'll let me know if you have a good experience. But I take my daughters every year. We sit in the stands, we enjoy the experience. I'm not gonna tell you that we don't have a couple of knuckleheads out there. You're gonna have that. We have 1 million people attending a game every weekend. But when it happens, we wanna make sure that we're dealing with it effectively, quickly, and hopefully discourage that kind of behavior going forward. Yes?
Commissioner, 2 questions. One, the Steelers have the toughest schedules, or anything you can do about that? And, the second question is, when will a final decision be made on extra points and any changes there?
Well, let me take those in reverse order. The extra point, we made a decision for this season. We moved the extra point back. We have also added, I think, some excitement in the sense that if a kick is blocked or there's a fumble, that the defense can actually score on the play. And I think that's, again, going to add some element to it. That we hope is just going to take a play that was essentially an automatic play. I think our accuracy rate on the extra point was about 99.2%. It is, when we move it back to the 15, it looks like it'll be about 94%. We also came very close to encouraging a 2-point conversion by moving the ball up to the 1.5 yard line. There was a debate about where. Mike Tomlin was somebody who came up with the idea, actually. He was the first I heard from him. And I think it's a terrific idea. That's under consideration, but when we make a rule change, we like to make one element of the change a year so we can see what the impact is. So we want to see, does this change by moving the extra point back and reducing the accuracy rate? Will this change it sufficiently enough that teams will go for 2? We want to see what that impact is. If it's not great, we may consider moving the line of scrimmage up. We have also talked about moving the goalpost in. Just last week from a former kicker, I got a suggestion, put a bar across the top and put a net in it and make them have to kick it into the net. So we got a lot of crazy ideas. But I will tell you, we have our overtime rule was actually a suggestion by a fan. So we listened to all of them, and we've had some great ideas from fans. Your first question was the Steelers' schedule, right? Yeah, well, here's the 2 things. Every 32 teams think they have the hardest schedule in the league. I hear it every day. The schedule is made up, it's a formula that's determined who you play and where you play. We, as the league, determine exactly the dates and in the order in which you play. So that's done by our office with, when I tell you the complications of putting a schedule together for 32 teams, availability of stadiums, considering the competitive consequences, it's in my view, one of the most significant advances we've had by the sophistication in which we do that. It's all done by computer, where when I started in the league, and even 20 years ago, it was done by hand. And now we're able to run literally millions of different scheduling formats, work that down and try to get it to where we minimize the competitive consequences. Teams know they have to play tough teams. What they want to do is avoid 3 or 4 game road trips. They want to make sure that their buys are spaced properly. So there's a lot of things, Monday night games, they want to make sure they're not coming back on a Thursday, or a Sunday night game coming back on Thursday. We've all made changes on that for the safety of the game, but also for the quality of the competition. Yes?
Being a Western New York guy, this is a 2-parter. What are the odds that the Bills leave Buffalo? And 2, with the head injuries and everything, and mothers maybe not letting their children play football, are you concerned about the upper echelon athletes leaving the talent pool for football, leaving for other sports?
Well, I'm not worried about the Bills leaving Western New York. I think the Bills fans have been awesome in the way they've supported that team. We have new ownership up in Buffalo that's committed to making sure that they get a new stadium. It's done the right way. It's right for the community and right for the team long term. So I'm convinced that we're all gonna work together and find the right solution long term for that, for the Bills. On your second question, this has been a challenge since I was a kid playing football. Injuries were always a concern of people. I think the game has never been safer or better than it is today. If I had a son, I'd love to let him play football. If he wants to play football. It's a tremendous game with rewards that far exceed any risk that you have. It's a physical game, but I was watching the Women's World Cup. I saw a lot of physical activity and a lot of contact. And actually, our rate of concussion is very similar to girls soccer. In fact, there's a lot of research that would tell you that it's even higher. So I think it's on all of us in sports to make sure we make our sports safer and share that information so we can help make soccer safer and they can help make football safer. And I think you're seeing that. I think leagues around the world are coming together. We had a forum last summer in our office with the International Rugby Association, FIFA, International Hockey, multiple sports that came together to say, how do we work together to make sure our games are safer for our participants? Kids want to play our games. It's our responsibility to make them safer. And in fact, counter to what you might think, our youth football numbers are very stable. They're right around the same place. High school football is increasing as far as participants. And we're seeing better and better athletes come out. So I think the things that we're doing, investing in youth football, a heads-up program through USA Football, we've invested $45 million, which has had dramatic effect. The statistics we've heard is 78% reduction in injuries by playing heads-up football, where the coaches are trained and they understand the proper techniques. That's how the game is played, and that's the kind of results we can get.